Hi there, welcome to the Mountain of God. My name is Camille. Today is 30th of April 2021. Welcome to video number 10. Today I want to talk about a little bit more about the difference in between building your own relationship with God and the church. And I want to kind of look at it from the perspective that really the place to build your relationship with God is not your church. Let me explain. Listen, I was when I was a young Christian, when I was like 15, 16 more or less, when I started to really pursue knowledge and understanding, and I really was passionate about, I started after some time to have issues with really enjoying what's going on in the church, and I couldn't find reason why. I remember, the time of worship. It's supposed to be great. You're supposed to, have a great time then, and for some apparent reason, I just didn't feel that. I just couldn't, fully embrace and fully enjoy this whole thing. And when it just started, I just thought, maybe I had a bad day. Maybe it's like, something is on my mind. Maybe there's something in me that makes me feel this way. But when it prolonged its being, when I basically started to experience that over and over again, I started to think that something is wrong. And you see, this is one of the experiences that kind of pushed me to really think about it, to really really research what might be the reason and what is the bigger truth behind it that I should understand to make this whole thing go away, and so I would understand why it was even there in the first place. And what I discovered is that something that happens probably to many Christians, because I cannot be the only one. Maybe let me ask you a question. Have you ever seen a musician, someone who, let's say, play on a piano and they really want to be the master of it? Have you ever seen this kind of person to become a master just by going, twice a week for music lessons? And they do nothing during the week. Because as far as I know, there's not such person. Because if you listen to what the masters really say, is that 3, 5, 7, the 7 hours a day they practice and they grind to all of this day by day. And when they go to the teachers, they tell them, they show them the theory, they show them the tips and tricks, they help them to master what they're struggling with, and they give them more material for them to grind for the next, another six days. You see, this is with everything, including your relationship with God. Your place to build your relationship with your Father is at your home. That's why it's written that you're supposed to have your praying closet, you're supposed to have the place that you spend your time with God at your home. Because the difference in between the person who do that and the person who doesn't is very simple. The person who is not spending time with God has the same thing, the same issues as I did. Why? Because imagine, this is exactly what happens. You go to the church. Let's say that it's 90 minutes or the 2 hours of service there. So you spend like 30, maybe 40 minutes for worship and prayer. Then there is some service, there's some other stuff. At the end, you maybe meet, maybe you eat something together, have some time to talk and go home. The problem is the time that you can spend in church to talk with your Father, it's like 20, 30, maybe 40 minutes. If you're really charismatic, maybe an hour. But you've got to understand that during this hour, your church is in worship, your church is in intercession. And during what they do, you try to talk with your Father what happened for the next 6 days, for the last 6 days, and probably even more, because if you do that, long enough, there's tons of stuff that you were not able to fix and talk about because you just talk about during the 30 minutes or maybe an hour during the week, during the Sunday service. So you try to talk about what happened, talk about the things that you're struggling, talks about the things that you're angry or frustrated with, Talk about the people who maybe hurt you, or that you're having issues with. Then you try to solve your family problems. Then you try to ask for things that you need. Then you try to learn how to give him time to talk to you. Then you try, at the same time, you try to worship. Then at the same time, you try to intercede for someone else. Then you start to pray for your church. And then the preaching starting, and you're still thinking about the things that you talked about because it wasn't enough time. And soon enough, you see that you still think about it. Then the preacher ends, and then you wake up that you just missed half of it at least, because you were still thinking about the things that you couldn't fix and solve and deal with and talk about with your father during this 30 minutes or an hour. And now everything ends, and you do that a week after week after week, and after a few months you basically subconsciously connect meetings in your church with complete chaos and mind fog. Why? Because you never get what you want, and you never get something new because you don't have time to get both. And that's why I was dissatisfied and frustrated that I couldn't get, because I haven't spent enough time during my week with Father to fix those problems before coming to the church. And that's the difference when you do that. When you have enough time to talk with your Father about everything, because you've got limitless time to spend with him. Maybe everything goes great, it can prolong for, you planned for 30 minutes and you end up being there for 2 hours. Why? Because you just talked and it was awesome. And when you do that enough, you spend enough time with your Father, and you've got more time than you need, then when the Sunday comes, you know that you talked about everything. He helped you to solve every problem, or at least know where you're supposed to look. Maybe there's someone who'll be able to help you in a church, so you're going to talk with your pastor, or maybe someone else. But the majority of your problems are fixed. Majority of the things that you have to dump and kind of release, or you have to talk about them with someone, you did. So you just come to the church, already having great time with your Father, solving most of your problems, talked about everything, cried and laughed, and had this kind of relationship. Now you are so much closer that you come to the church, that and you become a part of this, what's going on in there, having great relationship with your Father built already. And now, interestingly enough, when it's time for praise, you praise and you have tons of the joy, because you're praising the Father that you spend so much time with during the week. When it's time to pray for people or to pray for something, you can do that. If there's time for intercession, like really someone needs help, or healing or something, depends on where are you in your relationship with God. If you're in this child period, when you're just fascinated with everything that he tells you, when he just shows you an amazing spiritual world and him as a person, how much he loves you, you just basically act like a child, and you're just like, Dad, John is sick. Help him. Dad, John is sick. But if you're mature enough, if you really spend enough time on this, and you're really sophisticated warrior, then you know what to do. You pull out your gun, you bring your sword, and then you just ask, Dad, what do you want me to pray for? And then, because you already know how to talk to God, and he just answers you, listen, he needs that. He needs words of wisdom. He needs words of knowledge. He needs a blessing, or he needs just a tap on his back, tell him that I love him. Maybe pray for deliverance. Maybe pray for healing. You know exactly what to do. You just raise your sword, bring out your gun, and shoot exactly at the problem, because you know what is the problem, and you can solve it. Why? Because you spend enough time at your home to build relationship, build the knowledge, build the experience. So now you come and you exactly do what needs to be done. That's the difference between these two approaches, when you have or not have a relationship with your God. And you see, when you do that, when you have this kind of experience, this kind of level of maturity, and understanding that you build your relationship at your home, like a master training for the playing on the piano all the time. But now when you come to the church, it kind of, you start to see that the church itself is not your nursery. It's not the place. It's not like a school. What is it called? Well, you're just not going there to be fed. It's not like a restaurant or just school lunch or whatever. This is, you start to see this. This is a place that you can do something, not just take, not just use this as, you know, as a book club, so you could feel better. Now you start to see that there's like in the middle of all of this, what's happening in church, there's like normal administrative stuff. Maybe you want to help with chairs, maybe you want to help with books, maybe you want to help with food that you eat at the end of this whole fellowship. Maybe you want to help the sound guy, maybe you want to greet people who are coming in. There's tons of like normal stuff to do. But then you start to see that the roles in the church are going both ways. You see that on one side you can find new people, some people who just become, you know, children of God, and they need just like a simple explanation, what is going on, what they're supposed to do, and, you know, this basic training. So maybe you've got some small groups for those people. Maybe you can work with kids. Maybe you can have some group to help people who are feeling bad or weak, have depression, whatever, you know, some help group for them. And then you can go and see that there is much more strategic side of this whole church. Maybe you start to see that there is so much more to do. Maybe you want to be like in part of the offensive part of the church. Maybe you want to be in worship. Maybe you want to be in prayer intercession. Maybe you want to be in a strategic intercession for praying for the city or praying for your leaders. It's a completely different thing. Maybe you want to be in an inner circle praying for your pastor. Maybe you see the prophetic anointing in you, and maybe even more. Maybe you become a prophet for that ministry or for that church or for that city. Maybe you're evangelist, and you're ready to go and just bring people to the church, help them get saved, basically. Maybe you're a teacher. Maybe you really want to go really deep in knowledge and help others understand things that normally they're not preached there, or you see that we can go more, we can do more, and we can know more. Maybe you're an apostle. Maybe you're really a person who is ready to go and just build new churches and then get the connections between your church, mother church, and then other churches, and just, you know, bring this whole thing up, and on and on and on. There's so many things to do. And then you start to see one simple thing, that if you have a relationship built in your normal life, church, it stops being a nursery, but becomes a machine to achieve whatever God wants to achieve. And it's fascinating, because not only it helps you to deal with the small things, just do something in a church, but then you can really see that church as it's on its own supposed to have a vision and a mission. Have you ever thought about that? And you see, the problem is that in many churches, and unfortunately, I had this experience talking with elders in a church, asking them, so what is the mission of our church? What do we really want to accomplish? And there were crickets. And they were not the only church that I saw have the same issue. You see, if you are in this kind of church, and especially I'm talking to you leaders, people who are pastors, who are, you know, leaders, youth leaders, elders, if you see that your church is like this, you've got to understand that this is exactly the reason. Two things will happen. One, you will see in your church people who are there 10, 20, 30 years, and nothing changes in their life. They're having the same issues, the same problems. They're immature exactly as they were so many years ago. Why? Because there's no mission. There's no goal to achieve as a church. So we are there just to survive, and maybe just waiting for us to be taken from here, because there's nothing else to do. We just being there. That's all you've got to. That's why I want to talk to you, not to bash you, but just to help you understand that there's just two things you need to do to change all of this. You got to know and do the will of the Father. So the one thing that I want you to do is just to go on your knees and ask Him, okay, that tell us what is the reason for our church, what we're supposed to concentrate on. Because if we won't do it, the second thing will happen. And I've been part of this as well. After every 5 or 10 years, and there are churches, there's many churches like this, when people are growing, people are being saved, and they are zealous to know more and more and more, and they basically get to the point that they grab anything they can. And in the midst of that time, you'll see that sooner or later, what they're going to be doing, going to be in contrary to what's preached in the church. Why? Because they want to take everything they can. And sooner or later, after 5 or 10 years, another wave of young people just leaves your church. And if that will be your role, to train people at the beginning stages, bless you. But if that's your role and you understand it, then every time this group will going to leave your church, you will say, if that's the time for you to leave, we're going to bless you to oblivion. And we're going to do anything to help you, to find churches you could grow and go farther and farther. But unfortunately, at least that was my experience, there's always pain of basically destroying unity of the church, because the group leaves, and many times that's the most active group. So then the people who are left is just saying, what just happened? Many times they don't even see the conversation, the dialogue in between those two groups in a church, because it's many times done behind the closed doors. So again, if you're an elder, a pastor, or someone, understand, if this is your role, great, bless people. But if it's not your role, and you can see that it happens over and over again, something's wrong is with your church, and probably because you don't know that this is your role, or you don't understand that you have to have a mission. You have to have a vision. What do you supposed to do? And give those people a direction. Grab them and put them in this machine so they could achieve and have some goal in front of them. That's why I can see so many young people right now from Christian families that they don't want to be part of the church. They don't care because there's nothing for them there. But if you understand that the building relationship with your God is at your home, and you're going to teach young people that, they're going to get mature and more mature and more mature, and in 2 or 3 years after they've been saved, they're going to be the next group of leaders that are going to drag another group that will become leaders in 2 or 3 years. And then if you understand that, and you see that you've got so many strong people in your church with very specific anointing and talents and gifts, then you understand that you can open another kind of start another, I don't know, mission, another function of the church, another thing that your church can do. And if you know that you have a vision and a mission for your church, you can change the city, you can change the nation. Why? Because you know what you're supposed to do, and you understand the basics, because you know and do the will of the Father. Listen, I'm going to tell you a short story just to show you why I'm so passionate about this. I think it was like over 20 years ago. Had to be. Anyway, I was in one church in Germany, and I know more about it by hearing about it rather than knowing them, because I've been there once. But so many years ago, what struck me is that this church know exactly what they for. They had few things that they knew that they're supposed to accomplish, and they had very little amount of time, those like few years, to achieve those goals. And the amazing thing was that during that time, not only they achieved what they want to achieve, they built like a training school for ministries and prophets and so on, but they have some other things that they were just locked in time. In those few years, they made so much fuss and so much amazing thing happened. So many people were trained. So many people went there just to get the anointing and be changed to serve in their own church. That they had so much impact that even I, after 20 years, I'm fascinated with that clarity and that vision. And what they did after that time, when the time passed, they dismantled and everyone went their own way. Fascinating story. 5 years, and they did more than many churches which were there, and you don't hear about them. And I don't want to, project anything, but that is fascinating, how if you understand how church is not a place for you to grow, just a place for you to serve, changes everything. So this is what I want you to take from this video. If you really want to go deep, if you really want to understand how this thing works, understand that the practice time is at your home. That's the place when you can talk about everything, spend as much time as you can, as you want, and even more, to talk with your God, to meet Him, to understand Him, to learn how to listen. It'll take you time to hear His voice, understand where He is talking and where there's my own head speaking. But then you're going to get experience. Then He's going to train you. Then He's going to show you things that you will have to hear and experience yourself, that no one in church is going to help you do this, because you have to experience yourself. And then you'll understand that when you are completely energized and completely filled with His Spirit, now when you go to the church, now you can help build it. Now you can help completely revolutionize what's happening over there for people inside, for people outside that we're going to serve. We can do so much. But it will have to start with understanding these basic two things in your private life and in church. We need to know the will and do the will of the Father. Think about it and do something about it. Because there's so much we can do if we understand what is our praying closet and what is the church is really created for. If you like this video, like, share, and comment. If you didn't, comment as well. Tell me what you think and what is your experience. And if there's anything you want me to talk about, give me a shout. I'll be glad to do it for you. That being said, see you tomorrow.